Now, I'm certain most of you have heard about Mollie Tibbetts. She's an Iowa Hawkeye college student from Iowa, of course. She went missing on a jog after she left her boyfriend's house. Now, FBI, local and state authorities are conducting their search and intensified it on a local hog farm. Now, some people wonder what makes a hog farm so special. Well, hogs by nature are omnivorous. They will eat bones, hair, flesh. They'll eat the entire body, digest it, and not leave any evidence. The only evidence I can possibly think of is they might be able to digest the hair, and unless someone combs through the manure, they're not going to find any hair, but that's just a thought. I'm not a forensic pathologist or a forensic expert. A few years ago in a neighboring county, an elderly man who had a small farmette hadn't been heard of in between 10 and 14 days, and state police did a welfare check. Well, they found in his hog pen, they found a human skull, bone fragments, and clothing. It was obvious that the man was consumed by the starving hogs he had. They figured either he had an accident or died on the scene and he was consumed by the hogs. And this illustrates the point, that hogs, they will consume anything, and in most cases, there's nothing left to be found. Canadian serial killer Robert Pickton, between the years of 1983 and 2002, fed many of his victims to hogs. Him and his brother owned a hog farm in Canada. Victims range between 6 women and 49 women. Never been confirmed how many exactly. In casual conversations, people wonder, a farm would be a great place to hide a body. Well, I've thought about that, and I really don't think that's true. So, we don't have a hog farm, we have a dairy farm. But I will show you a few places where someone probably could hide a body. But I'm also going to tell you what the drawback is and why it would not be a good idea. If you look at the floor behind me, you'll see slats. These slats is where the manure, urine, and other waste falls through. This pit here holds 1.3 million gallons. Could you hide a body in here? Yeah. Would it be found? Absolutely. Why? Because the manure is a liquid. It actually preserves the body quite a while before the body starts to break down. And once the body fills with gas, like it does in water, they float to the top. And we have a pump here that pumps the manure to a solid separator, and anything that can float finds its way to the pump. A few years ago, we had a dog that fell in. It was probably December or January. It was pretty cold out, and yet we still were pumping manure. We didn't find the dog till 4 or 5 months later, and he finally came to the front of the pit where the manure pump is. So that's how we found out what happened to the dog. He was gone that long, and his body floated and moved forward. Behind me here is a manure solid separator. It takes the water in the manure, compresses the water out of the manure, and what you see behind me is solids. Now, the manure solids, the internal temperature can be upwards between 150 to 170 degrees. Could you hide a body in there? Yes, it will break down the tissue within 10 days to 14 days. All you'll find left is bones. But the problem is, bones are evidence. If someone decided to hide a body in here, within a week we use the solids, so therefore identifiable parts would be found. Every few days we make a pile of dry manure. And I'm telling you, I'm starting to sweat just by standing near this. Now, the bacteria and the microbes, they will break down tissue. Now, what you have behind me here is a large compost pile. Now, compost piles, as of a few years ago, was an acceptable way to dispose of dead livestock. Now, like the manure solids, the internal temperature of these piles are pretty great. Even after a period of time, they'll actually dissolve the bone and leave absolutely nothing. Now, the drawback to a compost pile is if you want to maintain the breakdown of the solids, you have to continuously turn the pile several times, over and over, in order to maintain the internal temperature. This will accelerate the breakdown of solids. So let's say someone decided to toss a body into the compost pile and buried it, yet the pile was never turned. Once you go through the pile, the only thing you're going to find are bones, and bones will persist for quite a while in a compost pile that has not been moved or stirred. Now in the past, whenever we buried livestock, we never turned the pile, and we would spread it once or twice a year and spend about 1 or 2 days picking the livestock bones out of the fields. Behind me here you have an open pit 8 to 10 feet deep. It looks dry and crusty on top, but believe me, it isn't. So you think you can hide a body in here, put concrete shoes on it. Well, you're going to fail, and I'll give you 2 reasons. First of all, the body will rot and separate from many restraints holding it down. And secondly, any farm that I'm aware of drains their pits a few times a year in order to clear debris that might clog up pumps. So, not a good idea. Well, I mentioned earlier that we can no longer compost our livestock. So we bought an incinerator to take care of the problem. So I'm going to show it to you, but I'm not going to tell you what the drawback is. But it's quite obvious you could hide and dispose of a body in the incinerator. But like I said, I want you to take a close look and tell me what you see and why that wouldn't be a feasible solution to dispose of a body. Now I'm hopeful the information I provided is helpful to somebody, and I hope no one gets any sick ideas and starts planting bodies all over farms across the U.S. Last but not least, I hope Mollie Tibbetts is found alive, safe, and returned to her family. Have a great evening.